Word, goodbye. Description, a way to say farewell when leaving. It's a common expression used when parting from someone, signaling the end of a meeting or visit. It is a basic and polite way to express departure. Phrases of example. First, goodbye, my dearest friend, and farewell. Second, goodbye, my friends. It's been a pleasure. Third, goodbye, world. I've been here before. Word, will. Description refers to a legal document stating how someone wants their possessions distributed after they die. It's also the determination or desire to do something, showing resolve and intention. It conveys a sense of purpose and determination. Phrases of example. First, she had a stubborn will, refusing to give up on her dreams. Second, the will to survive is the strongest instinct. Third, it is the will of the people that matters most. Word, toe. Description refers to the terminal part of the foot below the ankle. It's the body part used for standing, walking, and balancing. It can also refer to a small amount or degree of something, like toe the line. Phrases of example. First, I tapped my toe, a nervous habit I'm trying to break. Second, he stamped his toe against the floor in frustration. Third, she pointed a toe and smiled, utterly charming. Word, flavor. Description refers to the characteristic taste of something. It describes the sensory experience of tasting, encompassing sweetness, saltiness, bitterness, sourness, and other tastes. It's often used when discussing food, drinks, or even scents. Phrases of example. First, the old recipes had a strange flavor, bitter and sweet. Second, the taste of coffee has a peculiar flavor. I enjoy it. Third, the wine had a rich flavor that lingered on the tongue. Word, whoever. Description refers to an unspecified person. It introduces a clause that describes a person whose identity is not important or known. It is often used in questions or conditional sentences, indicating the person responsible or fulfilling a condition. Phrases of example. First, whoever is satisfied, let him keep it. It is only a burden to me. Second, whoever you are, I have always known you. Third, whoever tells you that money is the key to happiness clearly doesn't know happiness. Word, party. Description, a social gathering with people, often involving food, music, and fun. It can be a celebration, a meeting, or just a chance to socialize with friends and family. It's a common and simple word for a get-together. Phrases of example. First, I'm going to a party with my friends tonight. Second, they were at a party, laughing and drinking. Third, she gave a small party for her close friends. Word, course. Description, a series of lessons designed to teach a specific subject. It can also refer to a route or direction. It is often used in school or training settings to describe a planned sequence of learning. Phrases of example. First, life is a course of learning. Second, a ship must have a course to steer. Third, we follow the course of history. Word, inevitable. Description means certain to happen, unavoidable. It describes a situation or event that cannot be prevented, regardless of attempts to change it. It suggests a sense of fate or an inescapable outcome. Phrases of example. First, the inevitable doom of man is to die. Second, it was inevitable, but I didn't want to accept it. Third, fate and free will, the inevitable conflict. Word, significance. Description refers to the importance, meaning, or consequence of something. It describes why something matters or has an impact. It can refer to the relevance, weight, or importance attached to an event, fact, or idea. Phrases of example. First, it is not a question of significance, but of life. Second, the significance of the meeting lay in the unexpected question. Third, the significance of these events should not be underestimated. Word, unlikely. Description means not probable or expected to happen. It suggests a low chance of something occurring, often implying doubt or skepticism about a future event or outcome. It conveys a sense of improbability. Phrases of example. First, it seemed unlikely that she would ever return. Second, an unlikely hero arose from the ashes. Third, an unlikely alliance was formed under the pale moonlight. Word, lie. Description, a place where you sleep. It's a piece of furniture designed for rest and typically found in bedrooms. It can be simple or elaborate, single or double, and often has a mattress on top. Phrases of example. First, it is a lie to say you are well. Second, a lie is a wrinkle in the fabric of reality. Third, the biggest lie I ever told was when I said I was okay. Word, useful. Description, means capable of being used to achieve a goal or fulfill a purpose. It describes something that is helpful, practical, or serves a beneficial function. It's often used to describe tools, information, or skills. Phrases of example. First, it is useful to have friends who can tell you the truth. Second, a good man is useful in all situations. Third, knowledge is useful, but kindness is more so. Word, absolutely. Description means completely or positively. It emphasizes agreement, affirmation, or certainty. It's a stronger way to say yes or to confirm something is true without any doubt. Phrases of example. First, absolutely nothing is to be done until I have had my coffee. Second, I absolutely refuse to be a burden on anyone. Third, you're absolutely right, but that doesn't make you any less wrong. Word, delay. Description refers to a period of postponed action or a setback in a process. It denotes a temporary interruption or postponement of something that was originally scheduled to occur. It often indicates a postponement or interruption of a plan or event. Phrases of example. First, the delay was frustrating, but we trusted his word. Second, there was a delay in the delivery of the package. Third, a delay might mean the difference between life and death. Word, by. Description indicates nearness, location, or method. It can show who does something written by him or where something is next by the door. It also shows how something is done by bus. Phrases of example. First, we were both going to do it by and by. Second, they came by the river, and the people were waiting. Third, he came by here just this morning, looking for work. Word, regulation. Description, a rule or instruction that is agreed upon and enforced by a company or organization. It describes a formal guideline that dictates behavior or actions to maintain order and standards. It's often used in professional or official contexts. Phrases of example. First, the new regulation proved difficult for the struggling farmers to comply with. Second, such regulations, if strictly enforced, would make life very difficult. Third, they were operating under a complex set of regulations, often changing without warning. Word, interesting. Description describes something that holds your attention or creates curiosity. It means something is appealing or engaging, often sparking a desire to learn more. It's a common word for expressing enjoyment or intrigue. Phrases of example. First, it was an interesting encounter, a brief glimpse into a different world. Second, the story was interesting enough to keep me reading late into the night. Third, she had an interesting perspective on the world, shaped by her travels. Word, very. Description, used to intensify an adjective or adverb, making it stronger. It's a common way to express a higher degree of something, like very happy or very tall. It's a simple way to add emphasis. Phrases of example. First, he was very tired after his long journey. Second, it was a very strange and unsettling dream. Third, she felt very sad to leave her home. Word, little. Description means a small amount or degree of something. It can describe size, quantity, or intensity. It's used to indicate that something is not large, numerous, or strong, often used with nouns. Phrases of example. First, a little learning is a dangerous thing. Second, I have a little darkness and a little light. Third, it was a little girl, lost in the woods. Word selection. Description refers to the act of choosing or picking something from a group or collection. It can describe the process of making a choice or the group of items that were chosen. It often implies a careful or deliberate process of choosing. Phrases of example. First, a wise selection of friends is better than a foolish wealth. Second, the selection of words is so important, isn't it? Third, his selection was complete. He had chosen his path. Word statement. Description, a formal or official way of expressing an opinion or fact. It's a declaration, often made publicly, and can be written or spoken. It conveys information clearly and directly. Phrases of example. First, it was a statement of fact, nothing more. Second, a simple statement can change everything. Third, that was a bold statement, young man. Word final. Description means the last one in a series or process. It indicates something is conclusive, ultimate, or represents the end of something. It describes a concluding stage or a definitive state. Phrases of example. First, it was a final moment, a time of goodbye. Second, the final chapter was always the hardest to write. Third, this is the final curtain, and it is time for me to go. Word plot. Description means to plan or arrange something, typically secret or unlawful. It refers to devising a scheme, often involving multiple steps and participants. It's used when describing the planning of an event, usually with a degree of complexity or deception. Phrases of example. First, they plotted revenge against the king in secret, hoping to overthrow him. Second, I am plotting a new approach to the problem, something truly innovative. Third, the villain plotted to steal the artifact, believing it held immense power. Word army. Description, a large group of soldiers trained to fight for a country or group. It's a military force, often organized and led by a commander. It's used when talking about a nation's defense or armed forces. Phrases of example. First, they were an army of shadows, and they moved through the darkness like ghosts. Second, the whole army of children ran screaming from the terrible monster. Third, it's not an army. It's just a bunch of guys who want to have a good time. Word tube. Description, a long, hollow cylinder used for containing or transporting something. It can be rigid or flexible, and can refer to various objects like pipes, containers, or parts of machines. It describes a shape or function related to containment or passage. Phrases of example. First, he's a good man, but he's got a tube somewhere. Second, I stared at the tube, a black void promising oblivion. Third, the old lighthouse had a single tube that stretched far into the sea. Word emphasis. Description highlights or stresses a particular part of something to show that it's important. It's used to draw attention to a specific idea, word, or aspect of a statement or argument, making it stand out. Phrases of example. First, the emphasis was always on the importance of kindness. Second, with emphasis, she spoke of the importance of education. Third, he placed great emphasis on the value of hard work. Word asleep. Description describes the state of being unconscious and resting. It indicates someone is in a sleeping state, free from awareness. It can describe people, animals, or even babies. It's often used with be to say, to be asleep. Phrases of example. First, I would not have you think that I am asleep, for I am very much awake, and I am watching you. Second, he was not asleep, but he was in a kind of a dream, a terrible dream from which he could not wake. Third, the whole town was asleep, and the only sound was the wind, a long and terrible cry. Word informal. Description describes language, situations, or relationships that are casual and relaxed. It suggests a lack of strict rules or formality, often used in everyday conversation and settings where a friendly atmosphere is desired. Phrases of example. First, she spoke in an informal way, as one friend to another. Second, it was an informal meeting, nothing formal or official. Third, the language was informal, full of slang and expressions. Word, pray. Description means to make a solemn request to a god or other spiritual being. It often expresses hope, gratitude, or a plea for help. It can also be used figuratively to earnestly desire something. Phrases of example. First, I cannot pray with them as they pray. Second, we pray for our sons and daughters, and for those who need it most. Third, I wanted to pray to somebody, but I didn't know who. Word, iron. Description refers to a metal, typically gray or black, that is magnetic and can be shaped. It can also refer to an implement used for pressing out wrinkles from clothes. It's a common element found in the Earth's crust. Phrases of example. First, he felt the cold, hard iron of the bars against his skin. Second, the ship was strong and true, built of iron and steel. Third, the blacksmith hammered the iron, shaping it with skill and strength. Word, assault. Description denotes a violent attack or physical abuse against a person. It signifies an unlawful and intentional act of aggression, often involving physical harm or threat of harm. It's a formal term with legal implications. Phrases of example. First, his words were a kind of assault, a constant attack on her sanity. Second, the sudden assault of the storm on the little boat was a terrible shock. Third, the great assault of the army was a sight to behold, a tidal wave of humanity. Word, drain. Description, to empty completely or deplete. It can refer to physically emptying a container or figuratively exhausting resources, energy, or hope. It suggests a process of reduction to an empty or depleted state. Phrases of example. First, the rivers rising will drain the valley floor. Second, the scandal threatened to drain his reputation. Third, the endless war seemed to drain the nation's resources. Word, educational. Description, relating to or designed to give knowledge or instruction. It describes something that provides learning opportunities or contributes to someone's education. It is often used to describe institutions, programs, or materials. Phrases of example. First, education is a progressive discovery of our own abilities. Second, the best educational tool is the book. Third, education is the most powerful weapon, which you can use to change the world. Word, relative. Description describes a connection through family or kinship. It indicates a relationship to someone, like a relative's opinion or a relative's visit. It shows a connection by blood or marriage, demonstrating a familial link. Phrases of example. First, he was my relative, but I scarcely knew him. Second, a relative poverty is often the greatest burden. Third, she was a distant relative, barely known to the family. Word, wide. Description means covering or extending a large distance or area. It can also describe something that includes a great range or variety. It is used to describe measurements, spaces, or the extent of something. Phrases of example. First, the ocean was wide and deep, and full of mysteries. Second, he looked out over the wide, open plains of his youth. Third, the empire stretched wide, a web of roads and cities. Word, compensation. Description refers to payment given to offset a loss, injury, or work performed. It can denote financial reimbursement, damages awarded in a lawsuit, or wages paid for a job. It implies a balance or restitution is being made. Phrases of example. First, financial compensation is essential for fostering a sense of dedication. Second, the compensation for past wrongs must be proportional and just. Third, no compensation can undo the damage of this betrayal. Word, soap. Description, a cleansing agent used with water to wash and clean. It's a solid or liquid used for personal hygiene and cleaning surfaces, often creating foam when lathered. It's a common household item. Phrases of example. First, I used to bathe with soap and wash my hair with it too. Second, the bubbles clung to the soap like a stubborn memory. Third, he smelled of soap and sawdust, a comforting aroma. Word contest. Description, a competition or rivalry. It can refer to an organized event where people compete, or a disagreement or dispute between people or groups. It suggests a challenge or struggle to achieve something. Phrases of example. First, he was determined to contest the election results with every ounce of his being. Second, the ensuing contest proved to be a battle of wills, a struggle for dominance. Third, the contest seemed to grow more intense, with each passing round. Word huge. Description means very large in size, amount, or intensity. It describes something that is significantly bigger than average. It can refer to physical size or also to a quantity or degree. Phrases of example. First, the whale seemed huge and powerful. Second, he felt a huge responsibility for her safety. Third, the castle was huge, with towers that seemed to touch the sky. Word tidy. Description means neat and organized, free from disorder. It describes something that is clean, well-arranged, and presentable. It's often used for rooms, spaces, or habits that are kept in good order. Phrases of example. First, it was a tidy sum, enough to make a man comfortable. Second, his room was always tidy, a small reflection of his ordered mind. Third, the house was tidy but felt strangely empty. Word discrimination. Description refers to the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people. It highlights unfair actions or attitudes based on characteristics like race, religion, or gender, often involving bias and inequality. Phrases of example. First, the most effective way to fight discrimination is to disarm it. Second, discrimination is an insurmountable barrier to freedom and equality. Third, discrimination is a virus that infects the whole system. Word reach. Description means to arrive at, extend to, or be able to achieve something. It describes physical contact, a destination, or the ability to accomplish a goal. It can also refer to influencing or communicating with someone. Phrases of example. First, I have no words to reach you. Second, we must reach a place of peace, a place of healing. Third, I could not reach it. My hand was too small. Word reassure. Description, to lessen someone's fears or anxieties by providing comfort and confidence. It involves offering assurances and support to dispel doubt or worry. It suggests a need for emotional calming and building trust. Phrases of example. First, I needed to reassure myself that the dreams were not fading. Second, she tried to reassure him that everything would be all right. Third, he attempted to reassure her, but his voice lacked conviction. Word cult. Description describes something that is excessive or over the top, often in a way that is considered strange or eccentric. It suggests an intense devotion or enthusiasm that might be unusual or unconventional, sometimes with negative connotations. Phrases of example. First, his ideas were considered cult, only shared among a select few. Second, the group's cult following demanded absolute obedience from its members. Third, a cult of personality developed around the charismatic leader. Word supportive. Description describes someone or something that provides encouragement, help, and resources. It indicates a willingness to assist and provide emotional or practical backing. This often suggests empathy and a desire to help someone succeed or overcome challenges. Phrases of example. First, he found himself increasingly supportive of her artistic endeavors, even if he didn't fully understand them. Second, her presence was always supportive, a comforting anchor in his turbulent life. Third, a truly supportive community embraces vulnerability and champions growth. Word, torture. Description refers to the act of inflicting severe physical or psychological pain to someone. It suggests extreme suffering, often for extracting information or as punishment. It carries a heavy connotation of cruelty and inhumanity. Phrases of example. First, the subtle torture of remembrance. Second, the mental torture was worse than any physical pain. Third, it was a slow torture, designed to break the spirit. Word, missile. Description, a projectile propelled by a rocket or other means, often used in warfare. It can refer to a guided weapon system or simply an object launched with force. The term often carries connotations of danger and military technology. Phrases of example. First, the first missile had detonated over the capital, a blinding flash. Second, a nuclear missile was the ultimate expression of terror and power. Third, the interception of the missile was a victory, but a fragile one. Word, brush. Description, a tool with bristles used for cleaning or grooming. It can refer to a tool for sweeping, painting, or combing hair. It describes something with soft, flexible fibers used to remove dust or arrange something. Phrases of example. First, she brushed the dust from her dress and smiled at the crowd. Second, he carried a brush and paints, eager to capture the scenery. Third, with a brush of his hand, the king summoned his guards. Word, hide. Description, means to put or keep something out of sight. It describes concealing an object or person to prevent discovery. It's used when something is kept secret or protected from view, often for safety or privacy. Phrases of example. First, she hid her face in her hands and wept. Second, he tried to hide his fear, but his hands trembled. Third, they hid in the shadows, hoping to remain unseen. Word, incidence. Description refers to the occurrence of something, often used in a formal or statistical context. It indicates the frequency or rate at which an event happens, such as a disease outbreak or a crime. It's commonly seen in reports and analyses. Phrases of example. First, the incidence of disease has lessened with the advent of modern medicine. Second, rarely does an incidence occur without some degree of human error. Third, the incidence of violence in the city has increased in recent years.